Hi, my name is David Johnson. Today I will be talking about the social problem of chronic stress. I believe chronic stress is a social problem because it affects many millions of people, billions of people all around the entire globe, and it is not specific to any demographic. First off, what is stress? The medlineplus.gov defines stress as your body's reaction to any given challenge or demand. Stress can be good because from a evolutionary standpoint, stress was developed in order to have you fight or run from specific stressors. Back in the day, stressors would be something like you encounter a bear, so you either need to fight or you need to flight. You need to run. That's why it's called the flight or flight system. Acute stress would be something like stubbing your toe or forgetting your homework. Chronic stress is something more of stress that occurs on a daily basis for a long period of time. Some examples of chronic stress can be your job, your daily life, your cell phone, and expectations you hold yourself up to that you don't believe you can succeed, basically. Stress, as stated, stress can have positive effects, but it can also have negative effects. Some negative effects of chronic stress is high cortisol levels. The problem with high cortisol levels is cortisol is a hormone that is released to start the fight or flight reaction. And if the cortisol levels remain high for a long period of time, then it starts to drain all your energy and move all your energy to your limbs instead of your organs for recovery. So this creates risks for a lot of varying amount of diseases such as heart disease, autoimmune disease, mental disorders, anxiety, depression, increased aging, sleep deprivation, and obesity. Sleep deprivation can also be a cause of chronic stress. Some psychological effects include a lack of motivation, as stated before, anxiety, depression, a warped sense of reality, or change in perception. This is important to focus on because as stress changes your perception, then that change in perception can also cause increased stress levels. For example, if two people can be perceiving the same situation but have a different reaction to it. If I see something as a challenge, then I might gain energy from it and be driven to overcome that challenge. But if someone else might see stress, they might see it as a burden. And if you see it as a problem or a burden, then it releases the cortisol and heightens your cortisol levels. And through these heightened cortisol levels, as stated before, it puts you into the fight or flight. Other psychological effects can be limited memory and cognitive skills. One important thing to point out about chronic stress is that people in poverty are in a way more exposed to chronic stress for various reasons. The New York Academy of Sciences did a study about the stress account for socioeconomic effects on the health. And basically they found out that your socioeconomic status is a clear predictor of a range of health and illness outcomes for the reasons listed before. Because for one, that's one stressor right there. You're thinking about moving up the social ladder to improve your way of life and to improve your quality of life. Another is Abraham Maslow wrote a theory called self-actualization, and in his theory he explained something called the hierarchy of needs. The hierarchy of needs is important because basically it's a pyramid, and it starts from your very basic human needs and it moves up to your highest needs. Your basic human needs would be food, sex, water, basic needs like that. And then on the next tier, it would be your need for safety. Everyone has a need for safety. And then after that would be your need for belonging, like fitting into a group. And then after that, it would be your need, your self-esteem needs. So how you see yourself. And eventually, a self-actualized person is just another word for overall healthy person, mentally, physically, spiritually. And this is important when talking about poverty, because in the hierarchy of needs, if certain needs aren't met, then you can never reach that healthy being or the healthiest being you can be. And in poverty, it's really hard for a lot of needs to be met. I've grown up in poverty, so I know this firsthand. If you don't have, let's say, food security, if you don't have food security, then that creates a problem, because if all you're worried about all day is how am I going to feed myself, how am I going to feed my kids, then you're not worried about your kids' self-esteem, you're not worried about your self-esteem. You usually, in poverty-ridden neighborhoods, there is a huge lack of safety, because for one, nobody's thinking about safety. That's the last thing you think about when you're hungry. And it's a dog-eat-dog world out there. So poverty is exposed to chronic stress at a much higher level than people higher on the socioeconomic ladder, and that can explain why poverty is correlated to a lot of sickness, such as diabetes, cancer, a lot of different things. The good thing about this is it's a way to fight chronic stress. The way to fight chronic stress can be through self-care. Self-care can be working on your breathing techniques. Mindfulness meditation is one way to fight chronic stress. Yoga. Exercise, diet, and sleep are really important in fighting chronic stress. Sleep pertaining to, you should get at least around 6 to 8 hours of sleep. That's important because sleep lowers your cortisol levels, and while your cortisol levels are low in deep sleep, then that induces your recovery state. Lower drug use, lower alcohol consumption. Drugs can be anything from highly illegal drugs to caffeine. Lower drug use can also lower your cortisol levels and your stress levels. Alone time is very important, because if you are busy on a daily basis, then you need your alone time to regroup and recharge. A change in perception is the key to lowering your stress and not letting it get to the chronic level again. Because if you, like stated before, if you view stressors as a challenge instead of a problem, then your body won't necessarily have the same reaction as if you viewed it as a problem. One last way to fight chronic stress would be something like travel. All of these ways to fight chronic stress were found on the Institute for Research on Poverty, and a TED Talk called How Stress is Killing Us and How You Can Stop It by Thegis Launchspa. Thank you.